We're live. Just out of nowhere, surprise on a, what is it, Thursday? On a Thursday to hang out with David Mullins, sports psychology consultant in Ireland, and Robin Black here in Toronto. And we're going to talk about the mentality of combat. David, look, there's some people jumping in already. Peeps, and please let other people know in the chat if you do. We may not take questions till the end unless they're brilliant, and I just can't help it. But more likely where David's got some thoughts we call this the mentality of combat, the aftermath. We're talking about after big fights. I do a lot of Bellator stuff here, but definitely there was a big fight last Saturday night, so that's probably where we're going to start. David Mullins, sports psychology consultant from Ireland. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm holding up, and I'm excited to talk to you. It's been a while, so it's cool to jump on, especially after a big fight, like you said. And there's a lot to dissect because too many questions after a fight are what happens next. That everyone starts matching people up, and should it be Conor for the title against Dustin again? What about Gaethje? What about Oliveira? And what about Khabib? And I just think let's stop for a second. What have we learned from the fight that just happened? What happened in that fight? What maybe led up to that? Mentally, what was going on, and what lessons can we take going forward for both guys, and I guess for fans as well.
100%. I'm going to bring up Michael Venom Page versus Douglas Lima at the end of this because that's one that I think about in aftermath of big fights. But obviously, Conor McGregor fought Dustin Poirier. That's the one we're going to talk about. First, I'm with you. Why do we look ahead immediately and go, what's next for? Who should this guy fight? Because we actually don't know really much about what we're looking at a lot of the time, no matter how much we do. Take a black belt in something, and they are still a student, and students are looking back, and we're looking to see what we can learn. Let me throw a few thoughts at you before we go into this. One that I saw the night I went up live after Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, multiple people popped up and they said, can Conor McGregor win a rematch? To which I answered, if we asked that 7 hours ago, we would have said, can Dustin Poirier win a rematch? Right? Of course people can win rematches. They are a completely different scenario in all ways.
Correct. It's a totally new fight. And if they do rematch, even immediate rematch, even if it's like May or June or something like that, of course Conor can win. And ironically enough, in my head, Conor would have a mental edge heading into that fight.
Compared to this one, or
yes,
compared to Dustin, compared to Conor in this one, yes.
Compared to Conor in this one, like Dustin had heading into this one compared before. So, but I mean that's only a small part of it. But I definitely want to get into the nitty gritty of this one. Obviously, I was involved with SBG closely years ago, and so I have some kind of insight into comparing the 2014 fight, say, to the one that just happened last week. That might be interesting to people because there's been a lot of talk about Conor and a lot of, I guess, theories that people have, but I have my own as well that might contradict some of those or add a little bit more fuel, I guess, to certain ideas.
So let me just go a little further on this question for the sake of to inform people about any bias that we may naturally have, as well as what you know compared to what you did. Do you and John Kavanagh, I consider John Kavanagh a friend. John is a friend of yours, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talked to him on Monday.
Yeah, I also highly consider Mike Brown a friend. So I don't think I have any direct bias myself there. You don't specifically have any involvement in being employed by or connected to either camp currently, right? Either team?
No.
Good. Yeah.
No.
Good. So we're talking as humans with what we know. Yeah.
Correct. I definitely have a bias towards SBG and Conor and stuff because just to kind of throw out everything you just said, because I was involved with those guys for years, so there's no like bad relationship or anything like that. It just drifted away because I'm doing some other different things now. But I still I talked to John, commiserated with him after the fight and stuff like that. And but yeah, I mean, what I want to do here is kind of use this fight maybe as a great example of some of the lessons that we can take away from combat sports in general, I guess.
Okay, so let's go back and see. Yeah, I know you'll probably have things in mind to share. Is there anything about that first one that we need to know, that your experience being fairly close and seeing Conor McGregor rising at that point against Dustin Poirier? What were you seeing back then?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. I was heavily involved with the team back then of 2014. Let me paint a picture, if you will, for back then. So it was September 2014, that fight. Conor's debut in the UFC was in 2013, or I think it was April or something like that, against Bremage, right? And then he fought Holloway in Boston next, like September or something, 2013. Won that fight, but was injured at the ACL, so had a long time off. Fought Diego Brandao in his comeback fight in Dublin.
Yeah.
In 2014, May, something like that. And that fight, the after the Brandao fight, which was a huge event in Dublin, it was incredible, because it wasn't just Conor on the card back then. It was Cathal Pendred as well, who won the fight of the night. Gunnar Nelson, Petty Houlihan. It was a big night for the team, because it was a breakthrough night for the team getting in. Conor was already in, Gunny was already in, but the other guys kind of got in as well, and Ash was over on the Ultimate Fighter at the same time. So it was a big night for Irish MMA, huge night for Irish MMA. And just the week after that fight, so that fight happened, and then the week after that Brandao fight, I happened to be doing a seminar in SPG on sports psychology for MMA. Not for the team, because I was like working with all those guys and they all knew me, but for kind of members of the gym that would come in, and anyone who wanted to come in, basically. SPG put it on for me to do that seminar. So it was the Saturday after the Brandao fight, and the gym was kind of booked for that seminar. So it was like whatever time it was, the classes were all off and everything, just a seminar. A few of the fight team guys were in just to kind of support me, I guess, and show up. But then with about 20 minutes left to go in the seminar, Conor walked in, and Conor was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" He was expecting to walk into an empty gym. He had the keys to the gym. He was just coming down to work out. So he sat in for the last 20 minutes and everything, and people got photos with him and stuff like that. But then he went off to the far end of the gym and did his workout, which is what he came in to do. But to me, that was him back then.
Yeah, right.
He had just won a huge fight the week before, and he was starting to become a real superstar at that point. And the Poirier fight was already known. Like that quickly after the Brandao fight, he knew he was fighting Poirier in Vegas. He was already aware of it, because I was talking to him about that fight. I like saying how that's a great fight for him and this kind of stuff. But the point is that he was in the gym on a Saturday, thinking there was nobody else around, straight like that quickly after such a huge, and he was obsessed. That's the point. He was completely and totally obsessed. It was nothing out of the ordinary for him. This is what he did back then. This is all he did back then. And it wasn't like a big deal to see him there. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a thing that was. It's almost like there was no other option for him back then. He was completely and totally obsessed. Completely and totally obsessed. And that changed at some point along the journey. Whether it's after the Mayweather fight, whether it's after the Aldo fight, whatever time it was, it changed from that kind of obsession and every waking moment. Like he didn't have any, like he had more money back then than he had, but he didn't have the wealth that he has now. He didn't have the belts that he has and that he has held. He didn't have Mayweather money. He didn't have kids. He didn't have whiskey. He didn't have all those things that have come along since then. For sure, things have changed along the way. the obsession maybe has waned, and maybe it's come in waves or whatever, since that time, or since that time. Does that make
yes. So let's just sit on that for a little bit. So
Yeah.
you're telling a story, a specific story of experience that you have that is direct evidence, and if we took 10 other people that were close to him at the time, they would all have stories of direct evidence of this man's obsession. He talked about it. You're talking about it. We saw it when I studied him at that time. What we saw was obsession. And if we sit on that for a second, he was in the gym because that's how he would celebrate, by doing the thing he loved the most, the thing he was compelled to do, right? When you're truly obsessed, you're obsessed because you need to find answers. You're obsessed because you're deeply curious, but you love being there. You love the path, right? You love the doing it. I'm obsessed with building breakdowns, so I just build them. That I don't build them because they pay me. I don't build them because I have a contract with somebody. I don't build them because I might get a follower on Instagram. I just do them because I'm obsessed. And that's how that man was. So where does that lead? What does obsession get you?
Well, it led to, like, it wasn't just obsession that led to all that came. There was more to it than that. There was a team, and there was the right environment, and there was all these different things.
Yeah.
Some luck and timing and that kind of stuff. Yeah, all that's involved. But it led to him achieving his goals. He did achieve his goals. 2-weight world champion in the UFC, which is, it should never be. That should never become normalized, to become a 2-weight world champion. Now, like, Cejudo's done it, and DC has done it, and like, plenty of guys have done it, I guess, over the years. Well, not plenty, a handful of guys have done it over the years. But that should never be normalized in the UFC, to be a 2-weight world champion. That's absolutely incredible. It really is. And then, because of his personality and charisma, he was able to secure that fight with Mayweather as well off the back of it, and secure generational wealth.
Right.
And it leads to opportunities then that come up because of that fame, and it kind of snowballs, and you can bring out a whiskey brand that just skyrockets and becomes this huge success as well, along with other ventures. And I guess my point is, somewhere along the way, the obsession was lessened, and I think the environment changed. I mean, it changed. Like, John did an interview with Ariel in the build up to the fight, kind of comparing 2014 to now, and Ariel asked him, "Who's better heading into the rematch? Who's better? Who's improved the most since the first fight?"
Which is a good question.
Yeah. John's answer was that Conor had, because of the way the training has gone. But to me, like, I think John Kavanagh is the elite of the elite in terms of MMA coaches. What he did, bringing through a group of basically MMA beginners into Bellator, and like a big group in Bellator now, and UFC champion and UFC guys. But in that interview, John almost downplayed his own environment that he had built back in 2014, because he talked about the reason that Conor had improved. Conor's better now than back then is because of the training that they do, and the I guess the technological advancement that they've made, and the data they collect, and all that kind of stuff. And talked about being in the Stone Age back in 2014 compared to now, data wise and all that stuff. But I think John is selling himself short back like John now is selling John 2014 short a little bit, because the environment back then was amazing. And you have to remember, you had training partners for Conor. They didn't see themselves as Conor's training partners. They were on their own path as well. They were on their own journey. You had like Cahill and Gunny and Peter Queally, and plenty of other guys like that that were all on their own journey, and they're not. They don't see themselves, or they didn't see themselves as Conor's training partners or Conor's sparring partners. So it was a real kind of iron sharpens iron kind of thing, or it was that kind of a vibe, which is different as well. And I guess one thing, I don't know if this is true. You can maybe confirm this or not, in terms of like the low calf kicks or the low leg kicks, the calf kicks that did do a lot of damage in that fight. In the fight with Dustin. I remember, like, in the gym, and it's true for me when I'm training jiu-jitsu, but it's true, I remember it for the SBG guys as well, when they were doing their sparring days. Like, the guys would be watching other fighters on TV and stuff. They would see what they're doing. They would see the moves that someone is doing, and someone would come in on Monday after watching the fight card and try the move that they'd seen, or they'd be working on it and they'd try it out. Like, I remember when Eddie Bravo did that kind of special rematch, and everyone was the banana split. And everyone was trying to do that move. So like you had to, if you didn't learn it quick enough, you're going to get caught with it every time. So you'd have to,
for sure.
What are these guys doing?
But the calf kick, they would. So they were doing it because every single person in every single gym everywhere is throwing it. That's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it should be. But if you're in a sparring camp, it's a little different, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So let's touch on the leg kicks from a mentality perspective, the mentality of the fighting and of us observing it. So, if you had a conversation about it, and our reactive narrative is Conor wasn't prepared for low calf kicks, which is not true. He just wasn't prepared enough, right? His preparation to deal with that was, when compared with Dustin's preparation to smash him with that, were not equal, right? They just weren't. And John spoke. I saw this recently, and we are all very careful when we quote anybody, because we can assume there are many reasons to mislead people in interviews, to promote fights, to keep secrets, to whatever. But he was talking about, oh yeah, of course, we knew the leg kicks were coming because they're popular. He even cited Michael Chandler being hit with one by Brett Primus in 2018 or something. So, and Mike and Kavanaugh was there when that calf kick froze Mike's leg. So it's been part of Ben Henderson was throwing them in 2015 and people were noticing. This is not new to martial arts people. It's new to the audience. So or to varying degrees. So the audience is like, reacts to it. But what Don pointed out is, when we're training with that, people are hitting Conor in the calf with their not kicking to kill and their shin pads. And that's just we're not experienced now. We're not doing the work anymore. The obsessed that you were talking about earlier, the obsessed would be, we need to know everything about that. The surface layer is, these things are good. And for anybody who thinks that Conor did not actually or John did not actually expect calf kicks or leg kicks, you go back to Nate Diaz 2. What did Conor do in the second fight? He added leg kicks.
Yeah, for sure.
Remember?
And Artem did too. Artem fought Nate's teammate that night, and he had leg kicks as well.
That's right. So it's not like the idea of, in a rematch, leg kicks could be the difference didn't exist in their mind. They had already done that years ago. So it did exist, just the preparation was not comparable. The preparation, and that goes right back to your obsessed thing. I know Mike Brown. I'm a fan of his fighting first. Then we became friends, and now I really like hanging out and chatting, picking his brain, and they are in there. They're still obsessed. Mike's fucking obsessed. He's obsessed. And Dustin was in there from the day. And Dustin's obsession. Well, I know we got lots more to go with. Dustin's sort of, a lot of what we see from Dustin Poirier is his reaction to losing to Khabib. Don't you think? How he reset, refocused, understood, and where he's gone from that day forward?
I don't know. I thought even before Khabib he had made massive adjustments. So Khabib might be just that good that he is actually levels above these guys that we're talking about.
Yeah.
He might be that good. But I thought Dustin made massive adjustments after a no contest with Eddie Alvarez, where in that fight it was a weird one. It was a very strange ending to it. I thought in those moments where Dustin was, I don't know. I've never talked to Dustin or his team about it, but I felt like in those moments in that fight that turned out to be a no contest, and maybe in reviewing those moments, that he came out with a different mindset after that. He had already made adjustments after the Conor McGregor loss and the Michael Johnson loss, but I thought the leaps were after the no contest with Eddie, where his mindset kind of he became even more gritty and mentally tougher, I think, after that. And he's shown that in lots of fights since that.
Yes, agreed.
The Khabib fight was different, I guess, because he it was Khabib, so I don't know, but he definitely made adjustments after that loss again, and has come back again.
So
strong.
I want to talk about one more thing about him, and then let's get back to your path of looking back from Conor forward. But the one thing I wanted to ask is when talking about this fight in advance and sort of the outward appearances of how Dustin Poirier was framing this fight and looking at this fight. One, it was business and he didn't dislike this man, and that would seem to be very important. But two, this was an important fight, not because it was Conor McGregor or because it was a rematch, but because his greater goal of being the undisputed UFC champion is only achievable if this one is fought properly. Do you like all of that? If you were working with him, would you like all the way that's all framed?
Yeah, because I do, because I was thinking about the fight. Everyone, like from Dustin's perspective as well, everyone was asking in the build-up about the first fight with Conor back in 2014 when he was knocked out in 90 seconds or wherever it was.
Yeah.
But nobody had asked him about that fight for years leading into any of his other fights. But now it came up because it's the same opponent. But to me, it served as much relevance as it did when he was heading into the Hooker fight or the Gaethje fight or the Alvarez fight. Why would he bring up the Conor McGregor fight now just because it's Conor McGregor? Why would that matter? He wasn't thinking about it heading into Dan Hooker. Why on earth would he need to think about it now?
But it will be brought up because that's how the media frames these things. So he prepared for the fact that it will be brought up. But I love your point. It's like it had the same relevance 2 fights ago as it has for this fight.
Yeah, like he could, and that's the way it turned out. But he could have, if he wanted, made Conor some kind of boogeyman. DC talked about it in the build-up of you have to try to convince yourself that you just got caught with something, which to me,
I saw that. I was shocked. That's the wrong. It's
a crazy approach, and I love DC. So
me too.
Tough to hear that because that's a guy who's lost rematches, like to Jones and Stipe twice, I guess.
Yeah, he's lost 3 of the 4 rematches he's fought in his life. He beat Anthony Johnson in a rematch. He's fought 4 rematches and he's lost 3.
Yeah, but to me, the opposite was true. You don't need to try to convince yourself you got caught. You need to see that night for what it was back in 2014 and be like, okay, what's relevant of that now? And when you look at it with a real microscope, there's nothing really that relevant anymore at all. What was key as well is obviously Dustin would have learned a lot, and he talked about it in terms of allowing himself to become so emotionally charged by his opponent and wanting to go in and hurt his opponent. And he knows himself that he almost let himself down that first time by getting so emotional about it. And then he would have seen Aldo make the same mistake after that against too. So he could kind of relate to that, I guess. But he definitely matured and learned lessons from that. So he carried those forward then. And then I guess it helped him. He was probably expecting to have to deal with some of the mind games and stuff heading into this one, and it kind of didn't show up in the way that it might have done. It wasn't as obvious and in your face as the first time, so he didn't really have to go through with it.
Which to some degree, Conor and because he's different, he's looking at that difference. So all of that games, but to some degree, do you think that Conor and Kavanaugh and them saw that it might be a waste of energy to play that with Dustin, or no?
I just think Conor's being Conor now. And Conor back then was that guy, and Conor now is this guy. He's always just being himself. And so I don't think he was definitely aware of the impact of what he was doing back then to opponents, but he was not doing it because that's what he wanted to do. He was doing it because, not like he didn't want to impact the opponent. That was like a bonus. He was just being himself, expressing himself. Yes, it was helping to sell fights and all that kind of stuff, and yes, it was impacting opponents for sure. But he was really just feeling it and being that guy. And now he's being a different guy because that's who he is. He has kids, and he's not. I guess he's not got the same
feisty.
Yeah, because he has achieved so much, and just financially, but he has achieved so much in the sport as well, competitive. So
that's a good place for me to raise something that I've been curious about. We talked about Conor McGregor in that first fight, what you saw personally. We've talked about a few other things. I think from the limited information I gained, that a guess I might have is that for Conor McGregor, the individual now, Dustin Poirier has his goals. And fortunately, the result actually seems to be in line, probably with helping him get there, which is fighting for the title. Conor McGregor, I gotta think his goal, knowing him as little as I do personally, might be as simple as, and that, I want to have meaningful fights. I want to do something special. I want to have big moments. I want to create a body of work worth admiring when I retire. Those are things he said. Do you think that the goal is somewhat that simple right now? And is that good?
That's a problem. I agree, and that's a problem. And I think the best possible thing for him is an immediate rematch with Dustin, because that's such a clear goal then. Oh my God, you couldn't have a clearer goal. It's a better goal than winning a title, because that'll drive Conor incredibly. Is having to avenge a loss like that. We saw it against Nate Diaz. And that obsession came back, I believe, between fights 1 and 2 with Nate, and because maybe it even had waned a little bit after the Aldo fight, leading into the Nate 1 fight, but then it definitely came back with a vengeance heading into the rematch with Diaz. I think it would do the same if it's Poirier. It would be for Conor's mindset. It would be the best possible thing is a Dustin Poirier rematch. He can get for that. He can get obsessed for that.
True. Of course, it's hugely risky too. You lose it twice in a row, and risk seems to motivate that individual.
Yeah. So that would be amazing, and that would be a clear goal, which maybe there has not been for a little while. A very, very clear goal, because before, like, as much as he talked about, there is no Aldo.
There was an Aldo.
Aldo was a goal, because he represented so much. Jose Aldo did at the time, and he had the belt and all that. That was a very, very clear goal. And then the goal, I guess it became beating Nate Diaz. That was the next goal that he had, because maybe he didn't have one before that. It was meant to fight Rafael dos Anjos for the belt, so that would have been pretty for a 2-weight champion. But then it was Eddie Alvarez fight, and it was 2-weight world champion, very clear goal. And then since then, I'm not sure what the goal has actually been. John even talked about that after the Khabib fight. He doesn't know what he would be coming back for. He'd need a good reason to know why Conor wants to come back before he would corner him and stuff like that. And I don't know what the goal. I'm not clear on what the goal actually is now. I'm not involved or whatever, but to me, a Poirier rematch is absolutely perfect, because it's super, super clear what the goal is then, and you can work
that's really, really interesting. Now, what about Poirier? So Poirier was very clear. My goal is to be the undisputed champion. He talks about it very clearly, because it's clearly been something that has, and it's interesting because they don't all have the same. For a lot of people watch fights, oh, well, you know, the goal is the title. That's not necessarily true for everybody. Sometimes the goal is to feed their family being a professional athlete. And sometimes the goal is to be the best fighter they can. And sometimes the goal is to make a lot of money. But Dustin Poirier seems very clearly to have set a specific goal of being the undisputed world champion. It matters to him. It seems to matter deeply. That's a good thing, right? That he has such a specific goal.
Yeah, that's a great thing. It's a really good thing. And I guess that has only the belief in that goal and the feeling that it's achievable and realistic has only strengthened by him, like winning the interim title, getting a shot at it and coming short would have just reinforced how much he wanted it, how much he would have hurt after that loss, how much it really means to him. And now obviously beating Conor is huge. And yeah, he's very clear on it. So that's a great place to be as an athlete.
So if for people who have been with us the whole time, we talked about your experience, much of it personally, in like right there when Conor fought Poirier the first time, and a little bit, we talked a lot about Dustin Poirier. What, other than I'm not obsessed, and if I'm not obsessed, I don't have the same focus, and I don't have the same drive, and I don't have the same, what else has changed, or what did you see in this fight? What did you see? You know, what else did you see from the Conor McGregor side in this fight?
Well, the inactivity thing is not just physical; it's also mental. So people think when Conor, and he was right, and I said it in the build-up, like heading into that fight in the 4 years, like the fight was on the 23rd of January or whatever it was. 4 years, in the last 4 years, Dustin was 6-1 and Conor was 1-1. And that's a massive, and Dustin's fighting top guys in that time. Like, you know, they both lost to the same guy, Khabib. Conor's only win was against Cowboy, and Dustin has beaten some, you know, the top of the top guys on that run. So inactivity though is not just physical. It's not just ring rustiness and this kind of thing that people think is a thing in terms of like physically being in there. To me, that's more of a mental edge.
Yeah,
the activity and
the familiarity.
The familiarity of not just being in there, but the preparation and the anxiety and the
trip.
Yeah, the whole thing, the more you're doing it, the better your ability to do it becomes.
The more you have to think and handle the realities of the week of and the day of, the more familiar that becomes. The more you have to handle the pressure and the fear, and the more you have to react to all of it. All of it becomes more. Yeah, you're greasing all those grooves, even the ones in your mind, especially the ones in your mind. It's true.
Yeah, so it's a mindset thing. I think is the biggest part of it, even more so than the physical feeling of being in the octagon and moving around and the different sequences. I think it's the mental edge. So to me, Dustin had a mental edge in numerous ways.
Yes,
activity because of his, his goal of wanting to avenge that loss, which would have been a part of his thinking for sure heading into that fight. As much as he's clear on his goal of becoming unified champion, and that being what he wants to do, and this fight for sure bringing him right there with a win. He would have also wanted to get one back over Conor, 100%. So he had lots of mental edges heading in to the fight.
I agree.
It's easy to say it now. It's easy to after time. I know this is called the aftermath. So easy to say that Thursday after watching the fight Saturday, but we were meant to do this the week before, and I would have said the same thing then. But you have to take it for it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, you don't care what people think of you specifically, which is healthy. So you're not lying to make people believe you something. That's what you believed, and I know that. And it's interesting. There's so much. We've had this conversation many times. Like, who's got the better mindset or the better mental game? That'd be like saying, who's the better high jumper? of two high jumpers, or who's the better businessman? Like, it's so complex. It's not a thing. It's 100 things or 1,000 things or 1,000,000 things. There was one little dynamic. So Poirier, when he finished him, actually landed two key punches. One hurt him bad, and the second one finished him.
Mm-hmm.
The one that hurt him bad, and there's 30,000 things here that are happening, but we'll try to narrow it down into 2 talking points. I hurt you bad. You need to realize this is, and sometimes I'll say this, it's time to panic, right? Or it's time to go to, we got a problem. We're always on high alert, but we must realize there is a heightened danger that has taken place. We have to know that, or the fight will end. Again, I know could tell me we should have that all the time, and we should. But there's a moment now we have to recognize. Conor didn't recognize it with that presence that experience gets you. On the other hand, I'm Dustin Poirier, and I hit you. I fucking recognized it. It's just that little, and that's the comfort of being in there, and that's the experience, and that's the awareness, and that's the being finely tuned to it, and that's like, you didn't realize it quite, and I did, and that one dynamic is a really big one. Poirier, I know that, because if you don't, there's 1,000 options at any point. And I've hurt you. We see people rush in and get knocked out. We see people back away, and that moment has maybe goes. Or we see people do the right thing. And Poirier did the right thing, which again is easier to say now. But he had to recognize it and then do it, and he did.
Yeah, and it was almost like you could almost see a switch turning on in him. He just ramped it up, and because he knew it was there. And that's experience, like you said, and it almost reminded you of the Gaethje fight and maybe a few others like that, where he just ramps it up and it's finishing time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of over. It was a fight, and then it was over so quickly. And I guess Dustin, part of the reason Conor couldn't react, I guess, is because he was hurt.
Yeah, and even mobility. Like, if I actually have part of my machine that makes me move is in some way underperforming because of damage, that's going to affect that too. So, but that's double credit to Poirier if that's so. Not only, now, because he did that to him. So Poirier just had a fucking killer fight. That's the other, he just did. And the other, on the night, he was way better. He was better prepared, and he was better in the moments, and which is cool. I'm happy for that guy. Like, he's such a good dude, and he wants that, and it's his story too. It's always multiple stories, so we're super thrilled for that. But because Conor is so compelling, we become really curious how this, in theory, is going to be a really hard stage for him, right?
This week.
Yeah.
I mean, he was gracious and humble in the defeat, and immediately talked about inactivity and wanting to get back in. But then the next morning you wake up, and the next morning after that you wake up, and it definitely hurts. For sure, it hurts. You want to definitely, like I always talk to my fighters, you never want to get too high when you win, and you never want to get too low when you lose. It's not. If you're getting awful carried away and way too excited when you win, then on the flip of that coin is you're depressed and really, not able to cope when you lose. So you want to try and stay as even keel as you can mentally.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, but it's still, I'm not saying it's not going to hurt, and you're not going to be delighted when you win and hurt when you lose. But there's a difference between being hurt and being depressed, questioning everything. And there's a difference between like being happy that you won and going off the rails crazy partying because you won, thinking you're the greatest of all time now. So like he's learned to lose. He'll have felt this before. He's got good people around him and all that kind of stuff. So that definitely helps. But for sure, it hurts. It's a tough one. Over the next few weeks, it'll really tell, how much of a fire this has lit under him in terms of really pushing for a rematch or even for another fight at all. That'll come along in the next little while, and that's his that's his kind of thing with his close people to work through.
Yeah. So I have a call in 12 minutes with my people at Bellator on some new projects. So tell me what some of the key thoughts in this last 10 minutes, like your other key observations from the fight or the lead up or the result, any of it.
Yeah, I mean, it just, I've said it so many times, but it really does show again, every single fight is its own unique event that needs its own unique preparation. And if you just think you can do it because you did it before, or if you go through the motions a little bit with it, or whatever it might be, mentally I'm talking about, you're not going to get there. Yeah. It's not going to work. You have to mentally prepare for every single event. Yeah,
you just triggered something with me. How do I structure this? I'm Dustin Poirier or I'm Conor McGregor. I don't know who that guy is, right? I don't know who I'm fighting. I don't know what Dustin Poirier will be Saturday. I don't know what Conor McGregor. How do we handle that? Like, how do we handle not thinking we know what he is, the reality of it? Like, if I think so, and I ask this because sometimes I see these guys, well, and it's sometimes just words, but McGregor will, Dustin's a hell of a fighter. When he's got good boxing, southpaw. Like, once you start thinking you know what he is, we might have some problems. How do we manage that?
So yeah, that's a great question. What I like to do with it is, after a fight, like after the last fight, we'll do a review of the fight, lessons learned, but more than that, we'll go beyond and we'll start projecting into what the goal is for the next one in terms of performance. We don't even know who it's against. We don't know when it is, but we can already set performance goals for the next fight based on the lessons learned on the last one. Certain things that maybe you didn't execute as well as you wanted to, that you want to work on now. Certain things that you didn't even have a chance because you got them away too quickly, or whatever it might be, that you didn't get to do. Or if certain things you decided you're going to work on a bit more in preparation, because of things being exposed in the last fight. So we'll set lessons, training goals, and performance goals for the next fight. So then when the blanks are filled in, as in when the opponent is known and the date's known and the fight's for, the goals are still there. The goal of the performance is already set.
That's great.
The opponent is less relevant. The implications of the fight, as in, is it for a belt? Is it a number one contender shot? All these kind of things. They're relevant now.
Is it the last fight of our contract? Whatever it is.
Yeah. Because Carlos had that recently. Carlos Condit had the last fight of his contract kind of fight, and plenty of guys have had that experience, and that's as important as you make it heading into the fight.
Right.
But yeah. So once the performance goals are set and we're true to them and we really believe in them and we're really clear on what we're asking ourselves to do on the night, which is go in and perform to the standard you've set yourself, or above them standards. You set certain things. Then once we know the opponent, we'll talk about him for sure and what he means to you, but never really making it about beating the opponent.
Mm-hmm.
It's never about that. Because you fall into a dangerous trap then of it becoming too emotional, and it's too personal, and you're not free to express yourself and perform. And the big picture stuff, like as in what might happen next and all that, that's for others to decide.
Right. Right.
So we don't get to decide that anyways, really. So so that helps, I think, as long as the fighter really buys into that stuff, and that they're clear on what their performance goal is. That's how I like to work through that kind of thing.
I like that a lot. Yeah, that later the opponent comes along, but we've already made some strategies and plans and expectations of ourselves and things we'd like to achieve. And that's really cool. Because but that Conor's last fight was so long ago, that now all of a sudden, maybe that was done, maybe that wasn't done, maybe that we were, it's easier when you're obsessed, to go back to your original point. That's all easier when you're obsessed, because you go in that night, we want to know, where are we going? What more can we do? What are we going to achieve? You're wanting to have to make me take some time off the gym, that I'm working too hard, that like you're going to have to teach me how to learn and rest and understand that rest is important. That's what you want from your fighter.
Yeah, because Conor talked in the build up to this fight about how he was going to train next week. He was going to be back in the gym after the fight. And that was an alarm bell for me in a way, because why would you even make a big deal out of that? Of course, that's what you're doing. That's what you used to always do. Why would it be something? Right. Why would it be something you even say?
Why is it remarkable? It just it should just be so. Yeah.
Yeah. But it became remarkable because it obviously wasn't happening before, and that's what I'm talking about. That's where the real differences are in terms of mindset. It's hard to get that back when it's gone.
Mm-hmm. So true. But if you can, and when it starts to come, there's a comfort in it. It's like, I remember living like this, being optimistic and young and eager and hungry, and you want those things, but some of that feeling returns, that feeling of really being in great shape and performing well, and your brain is functioning well, and you know, like there's something desirable about it. So when you do hit that, you know, you can do it. People have taken time off, gained weight, or lost something, or like something has happened, and then they've regained it. But it's harder for sure. It's harder.
Yeah, it can happen though. You just need to be honest with yourself about the things you're not doing now that you used to do back then, or the things you are doing now that you didn't do back then, and be truly honest to yourself about those things.
It's just the thing, you know, like the fact is, when you look at the two individuals and their two paths, when one wins and Dustin Poirier wins, it's thrilling. I'm happy for that guy. That guy's goals, he's achieving those things. Then you look at the other guy, someone has to lose. I was thrilled for Michael Chandler. Michael's my friend. I've seen him work hard. I was at his after party when he lost last time. It sucked. You know, you're sitting there talking to his wife, and you're talking to his dad, and you're talking to all his family. You're talking to him, and you're like, we lost, and you're we now because you're where everyone is, and we lost. It's awful, but you know, it was part of it. It was part of it. Yeah. Michael fucking slayed, and now Dan Hooker. Like, you see Dan's dreams and goals, and this is part of it. This is the hard, painful part of it.
Yeah. There's so much to take from that fight as well. You could do a whole episode on Chandler Hooker, but yeah. It's all fascinating.
Yep. You want to do one next week, same time?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, friends, share this if you like, and we'll be back next week, exact same time. I got to get on a call with Bellator, but it's good to see you, man. Miss you.
You too. Yeah, you too. I'll talk to you soon.
I will see you this exact same time next week.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Enjoy the hostilities. I mean, enjoy the hostilities?